Hello, BookTube community. Welcome to another installment of Erin's Book Club. Today I have a book review to do for you. This is called Memories of Thompson Orphanage, Charlotte, North Carolina, by Stella Henderson Griggs Batson. Okay. This is a book basically composed of stories of people who've gone through this orphanage. And when I first started reading it, I was actually eager to get into it because it'd be interesting to see the other people's point of view when they're raised in an orphanage. The more I read it, the more disturbed I got. Right from the get-go, it talks about how wonderful this orphanage is and how wonderful the priest that ran this orphanage is and how everybody loves the priest. Which I thought, okay, well, that's good. And then it started making hints and digs at foster families, how foster families are only doing it for money, and how foster families separate kids, and how foster families aren't as good as, like, the institutional orphanages, and how people need to understand that orphanages are good too, and you know, it's not fair to judge orphanages as bad, but at the same point they're judging like foster families as bad. And I have a friend whose parents had done fostering and they did a damn good job, and I don't think it's right to be judging anybody on how they raise children that nobody wants. They're raising children that nobody wants, like, and every story in this book seems censored. And a lot of them start off as, oh, well, this child didn't like the orphanage to start with, but by the end realized how wonderful it was. And like you could say that with foster families as well, and they talk about how chores are done, and anything negative that is said is juxtapositioned right beside something positive that is said. And there's one story where a girl had snuck out for some reason, I forget what, and she was kicked out of the orphanage. And then they still use that story in saying, yeah, even though I didn't graduate from the orphanage or finish for the orphanage, I still learned a lot. Well, what did you learn? That they'll kick you out if you fuck up? And then they talked about how only this one religion has to be in this orphanage because it's run by priests, and it was really, they were trying too hard to make it sound wonderful. And I guess I'm assuming that they must have picked the best of the best to make up this book. And out of all of these, most of the people, when they got out there and found their families, they were divorcing in years after. So you can only assume that the socialization skills that the kids used weren't really as adequate as everybody thought they were if they can't live with their life partners for very long. Then I'm not saying that divorce means you're a bad person. My parents divorced. It happens. But you can't sit there and say that this orphanage is the best thing since sliced bread and that fostering sucks, and then have stories like this where they were obviously censored because they were all, oh, everything's wonderful, life is great, life is wonderful. It made me worried and concerned about the children that were there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it left me not, with stuff not sitting right in my gut. It didn't feel right. The book itself, though, I'm gonna say was divided really well. The stories were all very easy to read. They were always very quick. Then they got into, like, when the orphanage first opened to now what the orphanage is, and they're talking about, get this, they're talking about how they start off at this orphanage and they have a year of, like, treatment, and then they go to the orphanage's foster families before they get adopted. Foster families. Foster families that were evil and bad and were only in it for money. They're using them. So it's a very hypocritical book. It didn't sit right. I don't think I liked the book. Actually, you know what? I didn't like the book. It was very hard to get through. And, like, it's tiny. And it took me, like, 2 weeks to get through. It was too, everything's perfect. Everything's fine. Don't look over here. Look over there at the other stuff. Everything's great. It made you wonder if the priests were, like, molesting the kids. Like, that's not what I'm saying happened, but it was just all too, she doth protest too much, if you know what I mean. So I don't think I'll read anything else from this orphanage. I don't think this orphanage was anywhere near as great as they're making out, and I think that maybe the tone of the stories could have changed and maybe been a little more real. That's all I gotta say about that one. I'm getting really disappointed in the books that I'm reading, and I'm hopefully the next one will be a good book, because that's 2 books in a row that I just did not enjoy, and that kind of sucks. So I guess that's all I gotta say about that, and I will contact you guys again when I have another book read. Thanks so much.